Have you ever wondered why some teams just move, why they don't wait for permission, why they take ownership, why they seem unstoppable while others hesitate, stall, and second-guess every step? It's not because one team is smarter or more talented. It's because one has found something deeper than motivation. They've found inspiration, and that difference changes everything. Think about it. You've probably given your team the best tools, the best plans, the best vision slides, and yet something's missing. You look around the room and see potential that isn't being used. You can feel it. The energy that could drive transformation is there, but it's quiet, trapped behind hesitation, doubt, or fear of failure. And as a leader, nothing is more frustrating than seeing capable people standing still when they could be flying. The truth is, people don't follow instructions. They follow belief. They don't commit to a project because you tell them to. They commit because they see a reflection of their own purpose in what you're asking them to do. Too many leaders spend their time trying to push people forward when the real power comes from pulling them towards something bigger than themselves. When you walk into a room, your team shouldn't feel like they're being driven. They should feel like they're being drawn. They should sense your conviction, your belief, your energy, because the energy of a team is a mirror of its leader. If you're exhausted, uncertain, or disconnected, your team will be too. If you show up with clarity, courage, and passion, they'll catch that fire. Inspiration is contagious, but so is indifference. Imagine this: a leader standing in front of their team, not with a speech full of targets and deadlines, but with a story. A story about what's possible, about what the world could look like if they succeed together. That's when heads start to lift. That's when eyes light up. Because people don't wake up in the morning excited to hit numbers. They wake up excited to make a difference. And it's your job to remind them of that difference every single day. In every organization, there's a moment when the leader must decide whether they'll lead through authority or through influence. Authority gets compliance. Influence earns commitment. You can get people to do what's required, or you can inspire them to do what's extraordinary. The gap between the two is the gap between managing and inspiring. The leaders who ignite action don't talk about what needs to be done. They talk about why it matters. They connect tasks to meaning, effort to purpose, and individuals to something greater than themselves. They make people feel seen, valued, and capable of more than they thought possible. When that happens, hesitation disappears. Fear turns into fuel. Teams stop waiting for direction and start driving their own momentum. So ask yourself, what's the real reason your team hesitates? Maybe it's not that they don't care. Maybe it's that they haven't yet felt what you feel. Maybe they haven't seen the future as vividly as you have. Maybe what they need isn't another goal, but a reason to believe. And that's where true inspiration begins, not with louder speeches or bigger incentives, but with leaders who make their people feel something real, something worth acting for. Because when belief becomes personal, action becomes inevitable. Most leaders believe their job is to motivate, to get people moving, to keep the energy high, to constantly push their teams toward results. But motivation, as powerful as it sounds, is temporary. It's like a spark that burns bright for a moment and then fades unless something deeper keeps it alive. You can motivate someone to work harder today, but unless you've inspired them, that motivation will fade the moment they face resistance, doubt, or fatigue. True leadership isn't about driving people forward with external pressure. It's about awakening something within them that drives them even when you're not in the room. Motivation says you can do it because you have to. Inspiration says you can do it because you were made for this. That's the difference. People are motivated by rewards, recognition, deadlines, the external pushes of the workplace. But they are inspired by purpose, by meaning, by the sense that what they're doing matters. And when that switch flips, when they no longer work for you, but for something they believe in, that's when action becomes unstoppable. The best leaders know this. They don't just tell their teams what to do, they help them understand why it matters and who they become in the process. Think about the leaders you've admired in your life. Maybe a teacher, a coach, a boss. What made them unforgettable wasn't just their results. It was the way they made you feel capable, important, and necessary to a bigger mission. They didn't just give you direction, they gave you a sense of destiny. And when people feel they're part of something meaningful, they stop counting hours, they stop fearing mistakes, and they start pouring themselves into the work. The challenge for most leaders is that they confuse influence with instruction. They think being clear about goals is enough to inspire action. But clarity isn't the same as inspiration. You can give someone the best plan in the world, but if their heart isn't in it, their effort will always be half-hearted. Great leadership doesn't live in the PowerPoint slides or the performance reviews. It lives in the emotional connection between the vision and the people who bring it to life. Inspiration starts when a leader stops talking about what needs to be achieved and starts talking about why it's worth achieving. When you connect goals to meaning, you transform them from obligations into opportunities. For example, when a company tells its sales team, "We need to hit this quarter's numbers," that's motivation. But when the leader says, "Every product we deliver changes someone's day. Every customer we serve reminds the world what excellence looks like," that's inspiration. The task is the same, but the energy behind it is completely different. In any organization, there's a quiet truth. People don't work for companies. They work for people. They work for leaders they trust, leaders they believe in, leaders who make them feel that their contribution matters. When you inspire your team, you're not just asking them to do their jobs. You're inviting them to join a mission. You're giving them ownership of something bigger than their title or role. And ownership transforms performance. When people feel responsible for the mission, they don't wait for direction, they create it. Inspiration also demands authenticity. You can't fake it. People can feel the difference between a leader who truly believes in what they're saying and one who's just reciting a motivational speech. Authentic inspiration comes from vulnerability, from showing your team why you care, what you've struggled through, what you've learned, and what you still believe in despite it all. When a leader opens up about their journey, it gives everyone permission to believe in their own. That's why the most inspiring leaders are storytellers. They don't lecture. They connect. They use stories to paint pictures of what's possible. They show their team that every challenge, every setback, every obstacle can become part of a shared story of triumph. A story creates emotional memory, and emotional memory fuels commitment. People remember how a leader made them feel long after they forget what the leader said. Another deep truth about inspiration is that it isn't about getting people to do more. It's about helping them become more. Motivation drives behavior. Inspiration transforms identity. When someone is inspired, their standard of who they are rises. They start saying things like, "This is who we are," or "We don't give up here." They internalize excellence as part of their identity. And once excellence becomes part of someone's identity, you don't need to push them anymore. They push themselves. Leaders who inspire don't operate from control. They operate from trust. They understand that micromanagement kills ownership. The moment people feel like they're being managed instead of trusted, their initiative dies. But when they feel trusted, when they know their leader believes in them, they rise to that belief. Trust is one of the most powerful forms of inspiration because it tells your team, "You are capable. I believe in you." And when someone believes in you deeply enough, you begin to rise to meet that belief. Inspiration also thrives in alignment, when personal purpose meets organizational purpose. As a leader, your job is to connect what drives your people personally to what drives the mission collectively. If you can align those two forces, you create a team that moves as one. It's not about manipulating people, it's about helping them see that their personal growth and the team's success are intertwined. When that alignment happens, even the hardest days feel meaningful. Many leaders underestimate the emotional side of leadership. They think that being rational, analytical, and efficient is what drives performance. But the truth is, people don't move because of logic alone. They move because of emotion. Emotion creates energy, and energy creates movement. The most effective leaders are those who know how to connect logic with emotion. They explain what needs to happen, but they anchor it in why it matters. Inspiring action also means creating a sense of shared ownership. Instead of saying, "I need you to do this," say, "Let's build this together." Those two words, "let's build," change everything. They turn a command into a commitment. They make people feel included in the vision instead of burdened by it. When people feel part of creating the future, they'll fight to protect it. And perhaps most importantly, inspiration begins with how you show up every day. Teams don't just listen to your words, they watch your energy. If you walk into a meeting defeated, they'll feel defeated. If you walk in with conviction, even when things are tough, they'll find courage in your confidence. Inspiration is emotional leadership. It's leading with energy that uplifts rather than drains. So the question isn't how to get your team to act, it's how to get them to believe. Because when people believe in something, you don't have to chase them. They'll chase the vision themselves. That's why inspiring leaders don't just focus on results, they focus on meaning. They know that people don't give their best for profit margins or titles. They give their best for a cause they care about, for a team they trust, and for a leader who reminds them of who they are at their best. Inspiration turns ordinary people into extraordinary teams. It transforms the workplace from a checklist of tasks into a movement fueled by passion and belief. It's what turns a good leader into a great one, not because they force people to act, but because they make people want to. And that's the quiet power of inspiration. Once it's lit, it keeps burning even when you're not there to fan the flame. There's a story that captures the essence of inspiring action better than any theory ever could. The story of how one of the world's most innovative teams turned vision into movement. When Steve Jobs returned to Apple in the late 1990s, the company was struggling. Morale was low, products were failing, and many had already written Apple off as a dying brand. Jobs didn't walk into those meetings with charts, incentives, or threats. He walked in with a belief so powerful that it reignited the imagination of everyone around him. He stood before his team and didn't talk about sales numbers or market share. Instead, he said, "We're here to put a dent in the universe." It wasn't a slogan, it was a call to arms. He reminded them that their work wasn't about making computers. It was about empowering people to think differently, to create, to challenge the ordinary. That vision gave meaning to every late night, every failed prototype, every obstacle they would face ahead. Jobs didn't motivate his team to work harder. He inspired them to care deeper. That one idea, think different, became more than an advertising line. It became a mindset that lived inside the people who built Apple. Designers, engineers, and marketers didn't just follow orders. They contributed ideas, fought for excellence, and refused to settle for average. Jobs wasn't just managing a team, he was igniting a movement. And the result wasn't just innovative products, it was a culture that made innovation a way of life. But inspiration isn't limited to tech giants. Take the story of a young coach who took over a struggling high school basketball team. The players were talented, but defeated. They had the skills, but they lacked belief. The coach didn't start by drilling plays or setting new rules. Instead, he gathered them in the locker room and asked, "Why do you play this game?" At first, the answers were shallow: for fun, for college, for scholarships. Then he said, "What if we played for each other? What if we stopped chasing wins and started chasing greatness? Not on the scoreboard, but in our effort, in our unity, in our heart." That season, everything changed. They practiced with intensity, not because they feared punishment, but because they didn't want to let each other down. They played every game as if they were proving something to themselves, not to the crowd. By the end of the season, they were champions, not just in title, but in spirit. What changed wasn't their talent, it was their purpose. These examples reveal a simple truth. People don't rise because they're told to. They rise because they're inspired to. Great leaders help their teams see what's invisible, the future that hasn't been built yet, the potential that hasn't been realized, the greatness that's still dormant inside them. They make that vision so vivid, so emotionally real, that people can't help but move toward it. When you inspire your team, you turn work into meaning and goals into missions. You stop chasing performance, and performance starts chasing you. That's the magic of leadership that moves people. It's not about pushing for action, it's about awakening belief. Inspiration isn't a mystery, it's a practice. Something you can build every single day through how you think, how you communicate, and how you show up for your people. Great leaders don't just hope their teams get inspired, they intentionally create the conditions where inspiration thrives. It starts with the small, consistent actions that build trust, connection, and belief. Because when people feel seen, valued, and part of something meaningful, their natural instinct is to move, not because they have to, but because they want to. The first and most powerful step to inspiring action is to share a vision that matters. People won't take action simply because you've told them what to do. They'll move when they understand why it matters. A vision isn't a list of goals or numbers. It's a story of what the future could look like if everyone gave their best. Paint that story clearly. Make it vivid, emotional, and personal. Instead of saying, we need to grow by 20%, say, we're going to change the way our customers feel about this industry. We're going to set a new standard for excellence that people remember. When your words awaken emotion, your people see themselves in the mission. The best visions are both bold and believable. They stretch people beyond their comfort zones, but still feel within reach if they work together. And most importantly, they connect to purpose. A great leader constantly reminds the team not just of what they're doing, but why they're doing it, how their work contributes to something that makes a difference. When people feel connected to purpose, they start making decisions not for approval, but for impact. The second step is to listen and empower. Inspiration doesn't flow from constant talking. It grows from genuine listening. Too many leaders mistake communication for one-way direction, but inspiration is born in two-way connection. When you listen, truly listen, you send a powerful message. Your voice matters. Your ideas count. People become inspired when they feel ownership, and ownership starts when they're invited into the process. Ask your team questions like, what do you think would make this better? Or, what's getting in your way right now? Then act on what you hear. Don't just nod and move on. Show that their input shapes the direction you take. The moment people see that their ideas influence the future, their investment in that future deepens. They stop working for you and start working with you. That's the foundation of empowerment. Not delegation, but partnership. Empowerment also means trusting people to make decisions. Nothing kills inspiration faster than micromanagement. When leaders hover, people stop thinking for themselves. But when you trust your team to make calls, even if they make mistakes, you send the message that you believe in their judgment. Trust is a form of inspiration, because when someone believes in you, you start believing in yourself. That confidence is what drives ownership, creativity, and initiative. The third step is to lead by example. Your team won't rise to the level of your words. They'll rise to the level of your actions. Inspiration flows from integrity. When people see you working with passion, discipline, and commitment, they mirror that energy. They're not just listening to what you say, they're watching how you live it. If you want your team to care deeply, show them what caring deeply looks like. If you want them to go the extra mile, go there first. Leadership is contagious. Whatever you model, they'll magnify. Leading by example doesn't mean being perfect. It means being authentic. Admit when you're wrong, own your mistakes, and show that learning is part of growth. When your team sees vulnerability, they feel safe to be real too. They stop fearing failure and start focusing on progress. That's when innovation happens, when people feel free to take risks without fear of being judged. The fourth step is to connect effort to meaning. People lose motivation when they can't see the impact of their work. As a leader, your job is to bridge that gap. Celebrate not just the outcomes, but the effort that leads there. Highlight how every small action contributes to the bigger picture. Say things like, because of your persistence, this client stayed with us. Or, your attention to detail helped us avoid a big mistake. When people see the ripple effect of their contribution, they start showing up with more purpose. Recognition is a powerful tool for inspiration. but it has to be authentic. Don't praise just to motivate. Recognize to reinforce meaning. Be specific about what you're celebrating and why it matters. Empty compliments feel transactional, but genuine acknowledgement builds pride. When people feel proud of their work, they push harder, not because they're asked to, but because they care about the legacy they're building. The fifth step is to build belief through challenges. Inspiration doesn't grow in comfort, it grows in adversity. When times are tough, when goals feel out of reach, that's when true leadership is tested. Instead of shielding your team from difficulty, help them see challenges as opportunities for growth. Reframe obstacles into moments of strength. Tell them, this is where we prove what we're made of, or we've handled worse before, and we'll handle this too. Great leaders know how to transform pressure into purpose. They remind their teams that growth often feels uncomfortable because it stretches what's possible. When you show faith in your people during hard times, you create a culture of resilience. That faith becomes fuel. People rise not to avoid failure, but to honor the belief you've placed in them. The sixth step is to celebrate progress, not perfection. Inspiration thrives on momentum. Every small win matters because it builds confidence and reinforces belief. Too many leaders focus only on the finish line, forgetting that the journey itself deserves recognition. Celebrate milestones along the way. The first breakthrough, the teamwork that overcame a setback, the courage to try something new. Each celebration reminds your team that they're moving forward and that their effort is seen. But don't just celebrate outcomes, celebrate values. When someone embodies integrity, empathy, or collaboration, acknowledge it publicly. Culture is built through repetition, and what you celebrate becomes what your team values most. Over time, this creates a self-sustaining loop of positivity where people are motivated not by external rewards, but by the pride of living the values that define their identity as a team. The seventh step is to communicate with emotion. Facts inform, but emotion transforms. Use words that inspire, stories that connect, and tone that carries conviction. When you speak with passion, your energy becomes a catalyst. People remember how you make them feel long after they forget your exact words. Use storytelling to give meaning to moments. Share real examples, lessons learned, and moments of vulnerability. Emotion builds connection, and connection fuels inspiration. Finally, the eighth step is to commit to consistency. Inspiration isn't built in one meeting, one speech, or one moment of excitement. It's built over time through consistency of message, behavior, and belief. Your team watches how you respond under pressure, how you treat people when no one's watching, and how you stand by your values when it's inconvenient. When they see that your words and actions align day after day, their trust turns into belief, and belief turns into momentum. Inspiration, at its core, is leadership in motion. It's the practice of showing up every day with clarity, empathy, and conviction. The discipline of reminding your team not just what they're doing, but why it matters. When you communicate vision, listen deeply, lead authentically, and celebrate meaningfully, you transform the workplace from a place of obligation into a place of passion. The real power of these actions is that they don't just change results, they change people. They awaken purpose, build courage, and shape belief. And when belief becomes stronger than doubt, when people start to see themselves as part of something extraordinary, that's when they take action. Not because you told them to, but because they've decided it's who they are. Every team looks to its leader, not just for direction, but for belief. They watch how you handle the storms, how you react when things fall apart, how you speak when doubt fills the room. And in those moments, your energy becomes the heartbeat of your team. If you show hesitation, they'll mirror it. But if you stand with conviction, if you carry a vision so strong that it cuts through uncertainty, your team will start to move again. Not because they're told to, but because they can feel it. Leadership, at its core, is emotional transfer. You pass on courage through your tone, passion through your presence, and belief through your consistency. The truth is, people don't follow leaders who have all the answers. They follow leaders who make them feel capable of finding answers together. Inspiration isn't about perfection, it's about presence. It's about showing up with heart, especially when the odds are stacked against you. Your team doesn't need you to be fearless. They need to see you choose courage despite the fear. They don't need you to be the loudest voice in the room. They need you to be the calmest when everything else feels chaotic. When your presence brings clarity, your people start to trust not just your leadership, but their own ability to rise. When you speak to your team, speak to their potential, not just their performance. Remind them of who they are at their best. Remind them of the moments when they've already overcome, already created something from nothing, already turned failure into fuel. People forget how powerful they are until someone helps them remember. That's your role, to be the mirror that reflects their greatness back to them. Because once someone truly sees what they're capable of, you'll never have to push them again. They'll start running on their own belief. Every leader has a choice: to manage people's actions or to awaken their spirit. One is built on control, the other on trust. One creates compliance, the other creates commitment. When you inspire your team to take action, you're not just leading a group. You're building a movement. You're creating an environment where people don't clock in for tasks, but for transformation. They don't just work for results, they work for meaning. And meaning is the most powerful force in any organization. So, as you look at your team, remember this: the spark they need is already inside them. Your job isn't to light it, it's to fan it. It's to create an atmosphere where belief feels inevitable and purpose feels alive. Every word you speak, every action you take either fuels that fire or dims it. Choose to be the leader who fuels it, the one who reminds people not only what they're capable of achieving, but why it matters that they do. Because when you inspire from within, you don't just get movement. You create momentum that lasts long after you've stopped speaking.